So, I'm sure we're all familiar with the idea of separating art from artist, the mental gymnastics that most, if not all of us do from time to time with our personal problematic favorites who we continue to support with our time, attention, and money, despite completely condemning their actions and/or beliefs. And I don't really like to judge when people tell me what celebrities they are fans of or what movies or shows they watch, because I'm definitely guilty of using nostalgia or whatever else it may be to justify my support for some pretty terrible people and projects. And just so we're clear right out of the gate with this video, I don't think separating art from artist is a bad thing. On the contrary, I think it's a perfectly normal and natural thing for reasonable people to do. What is dangerous about it, though, is not knowing that you're doing it, being proud of doing it, or refusing to question why you do it. For example, there's a P. Diddler song from back in the day I always really liked and used to listen to pretty consistently. The song is called Last Night, and it's a really good song that I think aged pretty well considering the era that it came out. Anyway, I used to have it in my rotation all the way up until about May 17th, 2024. Why did I stop listening to that song on that date? Well, that's when the whole
domestic violence
clip involving Diddy and Cassie was released to the public, and then the whole avalanche of disgusting Diddler-ass fuckery would follow. After that, just listening to Diddy talk about women in any context became almost unbearable to me. Actually, now that I think about it, even certain Diddy songs that have nothing to do with women or sex or anything like that just don't hit the same after his whole trial started. Seeing that Cassie video effectively ruined Diddy's music for me. Not that I was ever a super fan of his before that or anything, but even the songs I kinda used to like are now just reminders of what a sick weirdo he is. But before you start hailing me as some morally righteous hero for no longer enjoying the musical stylings of a pervert, allow me to fully contradict myself by telling you how much I still enjoy the musical stylings of a different pervert.
Use your common sense. Y'all killing me with this.
I've talked a lot of shit about R. Kelly over the years on this channel, but I have to say that despite all of that, I do still really love a lot of his music. And not just the two songs he has that aren't about sex, hoes, and partying like I Wish or I Believe I Can Fly, which, just so we're all clear, are both
certified hood classic.
But I still love Ignition Remix, I still love I'm a Flirt, I still love that one song he has with Twista where he keeps saying the D at the end of every line, and I will continue to stand on my opinion that Trapped in the Closet is one of the greatest musical achievements of the last 25 years.
He looks at the closet, I pull out my Beretta.
Seriously, I've considered doing a whole joke retrospective video on the Trapped in the Closet series for a while now. Luckily, there are much better videos to make at the moment, but just know, if you ever see a chill review Trapped in the Closet video come out, I'm probably completely out of good ideas. Now, what is it about R. Kelly and every single depraved, reprehensible, and abhorrent thing he's done that I can sort of brush to the side and ignore that is so different from Diddy and all the terrible things that he's done that I simply can't ignore? The answer to that question is basically the main topic of this video. And the answer to that question is that every public figure has a threshold of how good they need to be at what they do to outweigh how terrible of a person they are, at least regarding what it takes for everyday consumers like us to still support them. I call this the crime versus talent threshold, or the CVT threshold for short. In order to maintain a successful career as a public figure, the crimes that public figure commits must never be greater than their level of talent or the quality of whatever that public figure provides to the public. And this can be literal crimes that break the law or social crimes that go against the court of public opinion. See, for me, Diddy was never a good enough artist to compensate for the litany of unspeakable crimes that he committed. R. Kelly, on the other hand, was talented enough that even though I would never condone the shit he's done and will always consider him a triple S-tier freak bull of the highest order, I will always bob my head and snap my fingers when Step in the Name of Love comes on. And every individual person has their own subjective CVT threshold for celebrities as well. You, random viewer, might still like Diddy and R. Kelly despite their crimes, whereas someone else might not be willing to give either of their music the time of day because of what they've done and how severe it was to them. Like I said, it's all subjective, and a lot of times you might find that your CVT threshold does not align with the majority's. As a personal example, I guess I can finally come out and admit this to you guys. I mean, some of you have been Chill Review viewers and/or subscribers for years at this point, so I feel comfortable enough with you to finally say out loud that I actually really liked the Ezra Miller Flash movie.
Boo this man!
Boo!
It's the man!
That's right, I stand on it. Not only is the Ezra Miller Flash movie good, I genuinely think it's the best DC superhero movie released in theaters since, like, The Watchmen back in 2009. I mean, it had Michael Keaton Batman teaming up with two Flashes and Colombian Supergirl to save the universe. That alone gets it a minimum of a 7 out of 10 rating for me off top. It's far from the best comic book movie ever made, but for anyone else that's been paying attention to the last 15 or so years of DC movies, this one was at least enjoyable, at least for me, which is more than I can say for at least half of the other DC films released in the last decade. But the real controversy around the Flash movie wasn't the actual quality of the movie. It was the fact that Ezra Miller's crazy ass was allowed to still be the face of the franchise, despite him being a legitimate menace to society. Like, there is not enough time in this video to get into all the crazy shenanigans that motherfucker was up to during the filming of this. But the worst part about Ezra Miller turning out to be a scumbag is that, in my opinion, he actually put on an all-time great performance in that movie. Maybe not all-time great for all genres of film, but as far as comic book acting goes, this shit is basically Shakespeare. You know how Michael B. Jordan is still getting glazed by the general public for playing two identical characters with different personalities in Sinners? Ezra Miller did the same thing in The Flash, but unfortunately for Ezra Miller, that nigga was basically a tyrannical cult leader in his spare time, and his haircut was really stupid, so nobody really cared about his acting chops. Ezra Miller is an example of a celebrity who has great talent, but unfortunately gets famous in the mainstream for their crimes before the world is able to get to know them for their ability. This leads to people brushing them off without ever really engaging with their work and never realizing what they might be missing. Do I feel bad for Ezra Miller? Absolutely not. Dude is a weirdo and a documented piece of shit. But I do feel bad that what should have gone down as a pretty dope comic book movie will always be remembered by the general public as a big flop that pedestaled a problematic psycho as the face of its brand. But so far, all of these examples have been of people who committed legitimate crimes that broke the law. But what about those other group of problematic celebrities? The ones who legally are without fault, but still say or do things that deeply offend the average person. And I don't think we need to ponder too long about who the best example of this would be. It's this guy. It's pretty much always been this guy.
You ain't got the answers, man. You ain't got the answers.
Kanye.
My dad wanted to abort me.
Every human being has something of value that they brought to the table, especially Hitler.
It's interesting. The swastika, I want to just, I know we have a little bit of time. I want to tell you, George Bush doesn't care about black people.
In the past few days,
He's a jackass.
Kanye West is one of the most fascinating people to ever walk the face of the earth. And I say that with all disrespect, but somehow also some admiration. You would be hard-pressed to find a public figure who serves as more people's former hero than Kanye. The general public's opinion on Kanye West has swayed back and forth so many times over the last 20 years or so with such great variance that it doesn't matter if you're talking to someone who hates him or someone who loves him. At some point in their life, their opinion on Kanye was completely different than what it is now.
He's a jackass.
As far as I know or can recall, Kanye has never been arrested or committed any major crimes. He's admitted to doing some pretty heinous stuff, but unlike Diddy, O.J. Simpson, Bill Cosby, Andrew Tate, Tory Lanez, R. Kelly, Johnny Depp, I don't think Kanye has ever been on trial for anything controversial. All of Kanye's issues have been played out in the court of public opinion. From saying that George Bush doesn't care about black people, to storming award show presentations not once, not twice, but kinda 2.5 times, maybe, to completely changing his conscious and introspective nice guy image after his mother died, to a hedonistic hothead sex addict, to marrying Kim Kardashian, to saying slavery was a choice, to supporting Donald Trump for president, to running for president himself, to saying that he loves Hitler, to the very dark era of Kanye that we live in now. Throughout almost all of it, he's managed to stay relevant and mostly beloved by a large number of fans, and that's because despite his clear mental illness and general douchebaggery, his music and his art were always groundbreaking, inspiring, and profoundly entertaining. It got to a point where it felt like no matter what Kanye said or did, he would never really lose the audience because as soon as he dropped that new album or single, all of his controversy would just sort of be washed away. Then he dropped this bullshit.
This is bullshit.
And him dropping the Jesus is King album basically started a chain reaction of him dropping terrible album after terrible album while simultaneously pulling crazy public stunt after crazy public stunt. Kanye's CVT threshold was higher than maybe any other artist in my lifetimes, and he still managed to break that incredibly high threshold with all of this Nazi bullshit and mid-ass music that's plagued his career since the turn of the decade. That's what I meant before by disrespectfully calling his life admirable. It's actually kind of impressive to do what he's done and sabotage his previously amazing career.
Actually, I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
I still listen to old Kanye, and I still love a lot of old Kanye. But new Kanye has been completely ruined for me since he took this whole controversial image to nuclear levels. But what this all does make me wonder is if he was acting like this back in his prime, like the Graduation, Dark Fantasy, Late Registration days, would I and the general population still find those songs as undeniable as we did back then and still do today? I mean, there's a solid argument that a person this unhinged wouldn't even make the quality of music that Kanye made back in the day, but I still think it's a good thing to think about. The last aspect of the CVT threshold that I wanted to discuss is how time and death can affect it in various ways. A while ago, I was watching a video from some of my favorite anime nerd creators called RDC, and this was a live stream where they were discussing the best R&B songs of the last 30 years or so. It was a funny and entertaining video, as most of their videos are, but there was one aspect of it that kind of bothered me, and I don't know if bothered is the right word, but it just didn't feel quite right. Basically, every time an R. Kelly song came up, they would instantly brush it off and would refuse to acknowledge its case for being better than any other song.
They bringing in the cancel man.
They bringing in the cancel man.
Bringing in the cancel man, bro. Gotta get that nigga up out of here, bro.
This was done because the members of RDC clearly had a very low CVT threshold for R. Kelly. And there is nothing wrong with that at all because, as I've stated many times before, the man is a fucking monster. But then a Michael Jackson song would come up. And it was as if all of the disgust that they had for R. Kelly was completely absent when discussing MJ.
It's Mike Jack.
Come on, Chad. Come on, Chad.
And you might be saying to yourself, but wait, chill. Michael Jackson was found innocent of his crimes. That's why he's accepted today. And you would be right. But so was R. Kelly.
Use your common sense.
R. Kelly beat two separate PDF cases. One in the 90s when he tried to marry an underage Aaliyah, and one in the early 2000s when he, I think I'll let the Boondocks say it.
Maybe R. Kelly did urinate on this woman.
You're not allowed to do that to a little girl.
If there's one thing that people rarely ever give grace for, and I do mean almost never, especially in today's day and age, it's PDF file behavior. Kendrick Lamar's nuke against Drake and their beef was basically him just calling Drake a weirdo who likes kids. That song dropped over a year ago, and Drake is still trying to recover his public image. And that's Drake, the biggest music artist of the last 20 years. So this made me wonder, just how high was Michael Jackson's CVT threshold that even fairly credible PDF accusations couldn't taint his image with the people of today? He was still beloved even before he died, but since he's died, it feels like it's almost become sacrilege to bring up his old allegations. Most people of today do not care and/or do not believe Michael Jackson's allegations of the 2000s. Even back then, it only felt like there was a small vocal minority who thought he actually was a creep who deserved to be locked up. But most people called it a conspiracy or a cash grab. And when he was finally pronounced not guilty on all charges, the people who supported him felt vindicated. But again, R. Kelly was also found not guilty. Twice. In the infamous words of Dave Chappelle, Michael Jackson might have made Thriller, and Thriller might be the greatest album of all time. But he was also a grown-ass man who built a giant amusement park in his backyard for the express reason for kids to play with him there. Even if that's as far as everything went. That's still pretty fucking weird.
It's Mike Jack.
Come on, Chad. Come on, Chad.
Doesn't mean he wasn't a great artist, but I'm just kind of surprised how little his weirdness affected how much people loved his art, especially when you compare him to literally any other artist in a similar situation. But like I said, death seems to affect CVT thresholds in a very interesting way. When O.J. Simpson died, there were legitimately people who were mad that other people were bringing up his troubled past, Same thing when Kobe Bryant died. Same thing with every MLK Jr. Day when people bring up his past with adultery. It doesn't really happen with these guys, though. I think pretty much everybody is on board with shitting on their whole legacy. But for the most part, death seems to change how people feel and talk about public figures after they're gone. If you were beloved at the time that you died, you seem to become almost impervious to critique. If you were loved by some and hated by others, death still seems to turn a lot of people positively to your side. Or at the very least, you don't get shit on as much by people who didn't like you. But if you were a racist, thieving scumbag, even if you were beloved at the time that you died, the people of today will probably still curse your name and overcorrect for those who foolishly praised you in the era before. There's so much more that I could discuss in this video about crime versus talent thresholds because, to a weirdo like me, it's truly fascinating to analyze how people view those who are believed to be special or better than the average person. But I think I've yapped enough on this topic for one video, so I'll leave the rest of the yapping to you.